along this journey for the last 2 years, I started in March of 2017. I've connected with individuals in an organic environment, being able to meet people where they were, sharing what my vision was for the city, and then hearing the challenges that many citizens face throughout their stations in life. I had no desire to be mayor, but I've pastored for 8 years in Chicago, and in that capacity, it was referred to my ministry as being one of helping hurting people in perplexed situations, and that's where I found my purpose in life. So when I returned to Memphis, I saw individuals who seemed to be intentionally marginalized and alienated, and oftentimes the individuals who were supposed to be advocating on their behalf were doing a small job of doing that. And it hit me one night that the mayor and pastor are synonymous in responsibilities, and as such I thought that I was the individual who could at least connect people, more people, engage more people into the voting process of vetting candidates, being more informed about the issues, and making sure that the people that we elect are those who are going to represent us, and not the interest of the money few and kowtowing to the old ways of city governance. And I decided to run at that point.
So you've been out campaigning now for months, talking to folks in homes and events, candidate forums, etc. What have you gleaned from talking to people, or the 3 or 4 major issues that you would want to focus on if you got elected?
So I've been in this since March of 2017, and across the city, people have shared a myriad of concerns based upon where they are in life. If you look at my mother, she has absolutely no children in school, so education would not be a issue for her. However, she is concerned about issues that deal with senior citizens, concerns about crime, things of that nature. So at the end of the day, my biggest drive for being mayor is to be able to create what I call a mayor's advisory council, and that brings in individuals from all walks of life to be able to identify what the problems are, and then identifying possible solutions so that we all can work together to all be connected and addressing those concerns. So whether it's law enforcement, we all know we have issues with law enforcement. We all know we have issues with the infrastructure. Some people may have challenges with our aviation. That, you know, we hear the narrative of individuals driving to Nashville because the flights are too expensive here in Memphis. So those are things that across the board we need to be addressing, and not just saying what are the top 4, but what are all of them, and then how do we prioritize, assign to put all of those into a tactical plan to say these are what are the pressings concerns, these are the timelines that we can possibly get these done, and moving forward where everyone is included in that process.
Well, I want to deal with something around leadership quickly before we go to other questions. The mayor of Memphis is the most prominent leader in this community in terms of holding political office and their stature in this region of the Mid-South. You have the biggest police force. You would oversee several golf courses, city parks, as well as a huge workforce. How would you use your kind of moral weight in your bully pulpit to focus on the issues you talked about, knowing that in some cases you may not have direct influence over schools or direct influence over events that happen in the Chamber of Commerce, but how do you influence those things?
So once again, it goes back to being able to create the environment where everyone comes together to work. The use of bully pulpit, I believe we have gone beyond that, where it's not just the mayor's dogma that we need to be living up to and living around, but rather we should be embracing, City Hall should be embracing the citizens. That when you enter City Hall, it is not welcoming. You have to go through security. You have to tell them where you're going. That City Hall should be a place where all citizens should feel welcomed to be able to come in. So I don't see the mayor's position being one of dictatorship, but one of inclusion, to be the senior statesman of the city, to be the new face of the unknown voices, to allow them the opportunity to be heard, to have their concerns met, being able to work with labor unions and laborers, being able to work with educators as well as the school board and anything else, so that we can make sure that we're not just doing day-to-day living, but we're actually being very intentional about growing people. And that's not what we're doing in the city of Memphis right now. When you look at education, we have individuals who are graduating from high school, matriculating to the post-secondary level and taking remedial and pre-credit classes. That's insane. And we need to stop that. So some of the things that I present are having churches, encouraging churches to be community centers. We have churches just about on every corner. Why not open those doors every day to provide supplemental education to students who are already in school? But then beyond that, we still have a population of individuals who have, adults who have literacy issues and things of that nature, financial management. Why not allow those churches to have those type of classes within them? One of the things that we have a challenge in this city is that most people operate within their own little niches, within their silos. People that live in South Memphis never venture out to North Memphis, things of that nature. So I present having an all-city youth sports program where individuals from South Memphis would compete against individuals in other areas of the city, and that would operate through that churches as community centers as well. And that doesn't just necessarily have to be sports, but it can be cognitive development as far as chess and debate teams and things of that nature, and learning other people around the city, learning more about the city, learning more about life outside of the city of Memphis. The other thing, as we talk about education, I'm specifically right there because you mentioned, Mark, that the mayor does not have a direct oversight of education. The other thing that I would like to see around our city are academic learning centers that would be able to provide workshops to parents who may be finding out that their child has IEPs and not necessarily knowing how to deal with it. Because when I found out that my child had a mild cognitive disorder, I didn't know what to do. And when I went into that first meeting, it was a challenge. Imagine if there was a support group in the community that was able to assist me and work me through some of those challenges. So those academic learning centers would be there. I would love to see those have canine therapy. Oftentimes when individuals have problems learning how to read and things of that nature, they regress because they're afraid to do things around other people for the fear of laughter and ridicule and things of that nature. So let's put in canine therapy. The dogs love the attention, and here it is, you have an opportunity to learn to read, to master your reading skill sets and in a non-threatening environment. So there's so much that we can do. I think that we have to be very intentional about being organic in as I always say, raising the floor for everyone.
I'm going to open it up to my colleagues. I know they have questions about specific topics that kind of see to know what you're talking about.
Yes, we know about Memphis. One of the things you talked about I thought was really interesting about the supplemental schools. I always thought about that myself with the churches and things like that. But we know Memphis has nearly a 39% poverty level among kids here. Kids who have to try to go to school, have to pass these tests, and have to deal with maybe coming home and the lights off, things like that. It's pretty bad. And a quarter of the city residents are poor. As mayor, how would you, what would you do to reverse those numbers? What specific things could you do? Where could we start with reversing those numbers?
maybe we just start disconnects for one of those. You know, let's look at MLGW and figure out, do we have to disconnect individuals? Because if we're going to do it, let energy equity be across the board. If we have corporations that are running balances of over $500,000 and they're not being disconnected, then let's not turn anybody off for $5. Now, that's a totally different thing.
Yeah.
And the mayor does have direct responsibility over that because MLGW leadership reports to the mayor. So I think as we deal with poverty, there is no one set answer, but we have to look across the board at everything, making sure that individuals, I mean, we first have to change the dynamic of what we're doing, because if we're giving so many subsidies to companies to come into the city, and they need a labor force, then we're intentionally making sure that we're creating a labor force by keeping individuals in our school systems not marketable. If you leave here, go back to MLGW, we have all our utility services coming from one place. Go to Chicago, you have ComEd and you have People's Energy. You're paying separate bills, and those bills for my household were upwards of $700-800 a month. You come here, you have one bill, and it might be $300-400 if your house is energy efficient. So as we talk about poverty, let's make sure that our housing stock is energy efficient, that weatherization has been done. Because I had a central air unit on my house, and my bill was like $600-700 a month because it was going out. But then, you know, I switched over to window units, and my bill is like $250 a month. So we need to make sure that people have the proper weatherization for their housing, that their disposable income is not going towards that. We also need to make sure that individuals have gainful employment in the city of Memphis, that you don't have to work 2 part-time jobs in order to get 1 full-time income into the house. There are so many things that we need to be looking at, but we have to be making moves and stop doing studies. We've had enough studies. Now it's just time for implementation. And I think that oftentimes the people who are neglected for their input in how to deal with poverty are the ones that are living in poverty. I just had a conversation with one of my friends who's running for city council this morning. She Googled poverty, and the pictures that came up were black people living in slums and everything else. And that to me is not the view of poverty. I mean, we can deal with the racial tones of it, but poverty for me is individuals living in capacities of less access. If I have to go to school and my school does not have textbooks, or I have to worry about not having heat in the wintertime, air in the summertime, all of those issues right there, in my opinion, are a society of poverty that we need to address.
Okay, can I pivot just a little
Yes,
bit
ma'am.
here? So, you know, you mentioned access. You know, one big problem with access is MILE. You know, buses. What would you do to, where do you stand on increasing revenue to MILE and making it more efficient?
Here's what to answer any questions about any of our departments is that we have to get on the inside to see exactly what they're doing. So we need forensic audits to assess, you know, what does the money really look like? What are operations really looking like? For right now, we're standing on the outside looking in. That's one, but there are some very specifics that we need to be addressing. If there are individuals who are working in the city of Memphis that get off third shift at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning and have no access to public transportation to get home, that's problematic. So let's be intentional. As soon as we get in, let's make sure that there are shuttle buses that can get individuals from one location to another location, even if we're not offering hour service or 24-hour service throughout this city. We have to be able, the city should not be in a place of making money on the backs of the citizens, but rather being in a position to assess what struggles the citizens are having and how can they better meet those challenges for resolution. That's what governance is really about. So I'm not going to say that MATA needs to be more funded. It may just need to be better management of the funds. So until we can really get inside and see exactly what the problem is financially, and to assess the fiduciary stability of the organization, that's the only thing that we can do with that question. But I'll also say, I think that I sit in a very decent position with legislatures, that if we do need to secure additional funding for MATA or any other agency, that I think that I have a decent rapport with those individuals to be able to, you know, work with them and get monies from the state if we can do that, as well as from the federal government.
Where do you stand on Tomley Park and the changes there and the parks?
So, for Tomley Park, I don't believe that we should be in the redevelopment of it. That's number one. If it is that we should be redeveloping, it should not be the priority. I was at Booth Park a few weeks ago, and it's named after, Booth Park is on Parkway, I believe, just east of 3rd. Renamed, named for the first African-American attorney in the city of Memphis. It has no park resources. The children have nailed a milk crate to the tree for a basketball hoop. No park benches, no garbage cans, no swings, no seesaw, no playground. None of the things that should be in a community park are there. It's not inviting. Many of our parks have overgrown grass. And when we're talking about raising the floor for individuals, I think that we should put our resources to make sure that there's equitable parks around the city before we start looking at cosmetic improvements.
This organization, the Memphis River Parks Partnership, has raised $40 million toward the $60 million it wants to spend at Tomley Park. As mayor, what would you direct the partnership to do with that $40 million?
So I am a stickler for being fiduciarily responsible with what you do. In churches, you know, for so long in the black church, we've had a building fund, and they're always raising money, but you never see any improvements to the building. And I've always wondered, I mean, what happens with that? In that same vein, I believe that if monies have been raised for that specific purpose, then they have to be spent for that purpose, or refunded to given back to the donors. But at the end of the day, I think that it's disingenuous to put an organization together that would be focused on that and not have individual organizations that are focused on that same level investment in our neighborhoods. To raise $40 million for a park downtown is completely insane when you have parks in the neighborhoods that need 40,000 individually, or 4,000, whatever it is. You're putting more money into tourism, but then you're lacking for citizenship, and that's problematic for me. You're the statesman, senior statesman, and I talk about the mayor's position specifically because most people say it, run for city council, but city council does not have the direct influence to make the decisions that need to be changed in this city. The mayor is the guiding force that radiates peace, prosperity, progress, and justice. And when that focus is not coming from the head, then the body itself is cancerous. And I think it's time for a dose of chemotherapy and a new mayor. I say it all the time, a new mayor will yield us a better Memphis. So as mayor, I will put a stop to that. There's an immediate halt on that, so that we can assess exactly what it is that we're doing. Because far too long, individuals that are in capacities throughout this city have catered to big development and those that are in charge, and we need to stop that. If they're not going to invest into the people, into the neighborhoods, then that's problematic. When we talk about MATA, individuals having to ride from Fraser and North Memphis to get to FedEx Hub for 3 hours? Why are we not making sure that they have jobs right there in their communities? Making sure that money is going back into their communities to build their communities to improve the way that they live. Nobody should have to travel this city for 3 hours in order to go and make a minimum wage for a living. I mean, that's problematic.
Is there a way, I mean, the primary economic development tool has become the pilot, well, I guess the TIF districts as well, but on pilots, is there a way that you see that the pilot could be used to actually orchestrate development in
Yes.
North Memphis,
Yes.
Fraser, Whitehaven?
Yes, it can.
How would that go?
From the leadership. First of all, we have to be very intentional about what we're doing. Let's change the way we do schooling. I present having the first municipal charter school system in the country. We don't need to take back the oversight of the schools. We don't have to do that. It can stay at Shelby County. We don't have to give more money to it because their budget is double what the city's budget is. Maybe they need to just manage it better. But then just think about it. If we're putting more money into a system where the individuals are already, managing it wrong, it's just going to be managed wrong with more money.
Yeah.
So I'm coming back to it, I'm sorry. So what I'm saying is, we get those schools, we determine how we're educating, and we're putting out a population of students that attracts businesses to Memphis, as opposed to us giving money, concessions away to businesses to come into Memphis. Let's have Boeing knocking on the door because we have a strong aeronautics program, or having other accounting firms and things of that nature knocking on the door saying, we see the type of students that you're producing, we see the labor force that you're producing, we want to take advantage of that. So they're knocking on the door begging us to come in, instead of us knocking on the door to them saying, come in and we'll give you the city. We need to get rid of retention pilots. If you don't want to be here, leave. And let's find companies that do want to be here. Tesla was looking for somewhere to put 3 factories. Tesla's at the cutting edge of technology, and we're not entertaining that level of incorporating business structures into our city. We don't need more distribution and warehouse facilities.
Mm-hmm. And so to attract the Tesla, we need an educated workforce. But how does that connect to using pilots specifically to improve North Memphis, South Memphis, improve the neighborhood?
So we first say, these are the areas, if we're going to have a company come in and they're requesting pilots, these are the areas that they have to go in. That's number one. We'll identify, you just can't come in and say, we want to go out here and do this. We'll put some areas together that we have to see that level of economic development. And then there has to be some type of social corporate responsibility, some community responsibility, that if you're getting subsidies of whatever $million, you still have a responsibility of investing into the neighborhood. That if you put a business in the Whitehaven area, that some of the elementary schools or whatever should still be able to reach out to that corporation to get some assistance for some programming that they may be doing at the school level, that the not-for-profits in that area should be able to reach out. The citizens were fighting against a landfill, Waste Connections expansion out in Whitehaven area, and instead of individual citizens having to fight that fight by themselves, that maybe these corporations will get connected with it as well. We shouldn't even have that level of environmental hazards in communities where people live. Because I live at the corner of 4th District 4 and District 5, and there is no conversation about it putting a garbage facility, recycling facility in District 5.
If you have geography-specific locations for pilots, and a component that requires a degree of social capital on the part of the corporation receiving the pilot, do you think that might cause companies to bypass Memphis and go to South Haven or go to Fayette County?
If they do, let them. Why must we have to beg people to come in here to do business with us? If they want to go to Whitehaven or South Haven, Olive Branch, anywhere else, if they want to go to West Memphis and they feel that they can do better, then do that. But let us be intentional about raising the floor for the people that live in Memphis. Let's put our own together. And you know, there has to come a point, because I'm very passionate about it, because it seems like nobody really cares when we talk about the political landscape, about just standing up for what's right.
In fairness, this did happen recently in Whitehaven with Elvis Presley Enterprises, where they worked out a deal where EPE invested in the city, in the neighborhood of Whitehaven's community projects, so they could get their benefits, incentives from the city. Now, in fairness though, they weren't going to move to West Memphis, they're based here. Your point is that if somebody's looking to move here from outside, I think Ted's point is too, that you might need a few things in your toolbox, because if they are saying, well, we're comparing Memphis to South Haven to West Memphis to Senatobia, and we're requiring some specific community benefits to be added to the contract, then they say, okay, well, we're going to walk. I think that's what he's bringing up.
And I got you. What I'm saying, that if that is the option, if that is the resolve, let them walk. We create an edge board that should be focused on attracting businesses that have a mindset of building not just their corporation, not just making more money for their leadership and their stockholders, but also raising the floor for the people in the communities where they work, where they exist.
And so you had mentioned that the company's coming in and improving the neighborhood. I spent some time in Fraser lately, and we had asked about Nike moving in and putting their facility there, and how that impacted the community. And the feedback we got was they didn't hire anybody local. So you've got this distribution where the facility is, but it didn't immediately benefit the people living here because they didn't hire the people who live there.
Yes, sir.
And now you've got another, possibly Amazon 4 million square foot warehouse in the same vicinity. So how do you ensure that it's more than just redeveloping land, that it's actually hiring people who are in those communities to raise up that community? How do you
At the end of the day, I think that the biggest negotiating tool is to go back and take our pilot back. If you're not living to the terms of the pilot, then we need to hold you accountable, and then go back and recoup what we can if you're not living to those terms. I think we just have to put the terms out there for these pilots. If you're coming into, for example, Blue Cross Blue Shield just put a park out in Whitehaven. In my opinion, that's part of social responsibility. You come into North Memphis, and to the Fraser area, you have a Nike plant, put a Nike park together. Those type things. That shows a level of connectedness. To speak specifically to what you're referencing, MLGW did a $10 million, at the time when I saw it, it was a $10 million contract to ABC tree trimming, to trim back the trees from the power lines. That's a Texas-based company that hired absolutely nobody from the city of Memphis. I applied just to see what the process was. They didn't even call me back. I don't think that we can give our money, our taxpayer money, away like that, and our citizens are not even benefiting. There has to be much better than allowing companies to come in here and bringing folk from Olive Branch and South Haven, West Memphis, to come into the city to make money and then take that money back to their neighborhoods to do whatever, to build their economies. I'm saying that if a corporation comes in, they agree to hire a certain number of individuals at a certain amount of money, and if they don't do that, then we go back and say, you've not fulfilled the obligations of this agreement, and this is what we need to be in order to be made whole.
But do you believe they should put not just stipulations on how many they hire, but where those people have lived?
Yes, most definitely. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
If I could change gears quickly to crime, Memphis is on pace this year to have more than 200 homicides, which is below its record-breaking number in 2016, but it's still worrisome. What can a mayor do, what can you do as mayor to address the murder rate and drive down other violent crime trends?
There's so much that we can do. First of all, do you see how dark it is in the city at night? Maybe we need to change the light bulbs and make them brighter in the street lights. Make the city brighter at night as opposed to these like yellow, gold kind of colors. I mean, maybe that's having an effect on individuals. I don't ever say look at the data, because data can be skewed to be manipulated to however they need to, do whatever. So I'm kind of biased on that. But I think from the mayor, I remember when I was in high school, we got a new principal, and there was a lot of riffraff kind of activity going on. It was us just being wild and teenager and things of that nature. And she had a big pep rally, had all the students come into the auditorium, and she said, look, all right, we're gonna stop this right now. You will not be able to do A, B, C, D. These are the consequences if you are doing it, and let's change this culture. I think that one of the biggest things is for leadership is just to be able to step out and say something. Like, one of the things I want to make sure that I do when I become mayor is to be in the neighborhood every day. See your mayor drive through the neighborhood. Why don't we have a community day every month where members of the community come outside and rake leaves together and work in the yard together? The worst thing we could have ever done is the invention of air conditioning, because now people go from the car to the house. They don't sit outside anymore. They don't know their neighbors, things of that nature. So it broke down that community life that we used to have of, I knew Mark lived next door to me and things of that nature. And I don't know who lives next door to me. And when we lose that connectedness to society, then you have more people who are engaged in activities that are just not more civil. There are some things that we really do need to look at, though, as far as crime is concerned. I'm just saying there are some cultural things that we need to be addressing as well that could reduce the amount of crime. I think that we need to see police officers more on foot. Encourage police officers to live in the districts where they work. That kind of thing. Just making sure that people have a job, careers. That, if I got to work 9 to 5 and I still got to get up before 9, and when I come home at 5, I still have some things to do, and I ain't got time to be standing outside trying to do anything. And then I'm not stealing because I'm making enough money to buy my home. We just have to change the way people live. You can't have a TV. For example, we talk about Memphis having the second highest poverty in the country, having the #1 place in Shelby County for payday lenders in the entire country, and then we allow them to advertise on the radio and TV during the Christmas season. We can't tell people, have things on TV that says that success is shown by having a 60-inch TV on the wall and then not giving them the opportunity to buy their own 60-inch TV.
Let me ask you this. The current administration has a plan to get to 2,300 officers. We're currently around 2,000. Do you think we need more officers, and how many would you want?
So I don't believe we need more officers. I believe we can probably do with less officers, but at the end of the day, if we don't change the leadership, we'll still get the same result. Because leadership will change the culture of a law enforcement agency. That, we can have 2,300 officers that are still doing whatever and operating outside the will of the people, compromise law enforcement, and we'll still get the same result. So, we need to be very mindful about what it is that we want our law enforcement department, our first responders to look like. The narrative, we hear this conversation about the response time for emergency calls is down to like 7.5 seconds, 8 seconds. But then there's no conversation on the backside that says people are on hold for up to 5 minutes on some of these calls. So just because the phone is answered doesn't mean that they're being facilitated. We have to be very mindful of what it is that we're doing and what our objections are and how are we going to get them. Yeah.
Well, one of your biggest decisions when if you become mayor would be to name a police director. Will you have a national search for a police director? And also, what would you be looking for in your police director?
It would definitely be an outside search for that, because you'll get the same level of leadership when individuals know each other. They'll protect each other, and you need someone that's going to come in and clean house. That's why we need a mayor that's really not connected to the infrastructure, the political landscape here in this city. Somebody that's, I want to say, that isn't biased by everything. I think that the what that looks like is above me now. So I think that I think that we all need to sit down and assess what does that look like and go from there. I don't think that that's one thing that one person can do that, but have the community come in and say, you know, these are our concerns, this is how we feel, and this is what we want, and then allow individuals to come in and maybe, hey, check this out, we have City Hall, go down to the chambers and allow the citizens to come in and have those candidates come in and let the citizens interview them, and let the citizens make have influence in that decision. That's just me. Like, we have these people that sit on these boards. I just believe in coming in, cleaning the house, and letting the citizens make recommendations. Who would you like to sit on these boards? Who would you like to sit in these places to make the decisions and recommendations for you? And then from there, we present that to City Council. And I'm not saying, you know, just everybody can be on the board, but we still vet them out to make sure that they are going to be the cream of the crop that's going to, you know, lead us in a different way. We've spent 200 years, you know, I'll digress. So, never mind.
You've been at this for a while now. You mentioned that you started campaigning in 2017, or was thinking about running for mayor.
Mm-hmm.
What have you learned about yourself during that time? Meeting with people, talking to people, what have you gleaned about yourself?
I've learned that passion heals. That's the biggest thing. And in my own meditation, I look back and we call the crucifixion of Christ the passion of Christ. And are you willing to die for what you're passionate about? And I've learned that I really am. Right now I sit here and I hold back tears, because I see individuals who have for so long been alienated and marginalized that it's been intentional, and they're depending on this cycle of individuals to help them. I've learned that you don't find yourself in pits because of the things that you've done wrong, but sometimes you find yourself in those pits because you're strong enough to bring others out who aren't strong enough to get out on their own. This has not been a cakewalk. I don't know why anybody would want to do this. You know, you see folk running for election after election after election. This has been an arduous process. It has been it's been very taxing on not just me, mentally, physically, and emotionally, but on my family as well. And there are many times that I just want to walk away, but I stay with it because I know that there are too many lives depending on someone to be in office that's going to represent them genuinely. I have accepted absolutely no corporate money. I don't believe in it. I believe in minimal government. And I think that this process has been very humbling to keep me grounded. My wife and I used to feed the homeless, and we started out with the homeless, but then we moved to homeless and hungry. We used to feed them every Saturday under the L tracks in Chicago. And before we would start, I always prayed that the Lord would keep us humble enough to realize that so easy we could go from one side of the table to the other. And that is always ever before me, that from this side of the table, because when we go back and I said that the mayor is synonymous with the role of the pastor, the second part to that is at the city level we call them programs, in the church we call them ministries. Nobody in our city should be hungry. We have churches with kitchens. We need to make sure that they have a team, whether they're working together or by themselves, but have all of these churches coming together to make sure that individuals are receiving food, meals every day. We have schools that are vacant. Why are they not being repurposed for our transitional housing? You know, it should hurt all of us to get to Brooks and Elvis Presley and see school buses pulling up in front of motels. But then you're building $500,000 dog parks, residential pilots being issued, but we have nowhere for these people to stay other than a motel, or they're staying in their families' houses, laying on couches and on floors. We've let our people down, and it's time for somebody to be in leadership capacities that is mindful of that and will ever keep that ever before them, to say, this is what I'm here for. That's what I've learned so much throughout this last 2 years, is that people are hurting, and you don't always see the scars. You don't see what people are going through all the time because they've learned to push through it. But they're hurting, and the only way you will ever be able to address it is to kind of be hurting too. I know what it is to have to call MLGW and make payment arrangements. So I'm not looking for us to hire somebody for 5 years at $320,000 a year to talk about improving customer relations. When I'm looking for somebody that's going to be in that capacity, that's going to lead a charge, where if we can raise $40 million for a park, why aren't we raising $40 million to improve our infrastructure? So that when we get a forecast of a wind blowing, power doesn't go out. But if power's going to go out, let it be equitable. Let the entire city go out, not just these isolated zip codes. That's problematic for me.
A few years ago, there were quite a few people who came downtown to show their discontent. They marched on that great bridge, closed it down. Had this mass of people assembled on your watch, how would you, what would you do?
I'll first say that they won't ever do that on my watch, because the reason you have so many activists is because they don't feel that their voice is being heard. Listen to the concerns of the people and address the concerns. People are only having civil discourse because they feel like nobody's listening, nobody's making moves for that. My whole administration is about allowing people to have a voice and being responsive to that voice. So we don't have to shut down bridges. We don't have to have die-ins in people's yards and things of that nature. Yeah, we have activists, but then, you know, have them come to City Hall. Why are we not having, with the technology that we have, we could have a Facebook Live from the mayor's office every week or every 2 weeks. The mayor can have town halls in every community to make sure that individuals are connecting. Our current mayor doesn't even go to city council every meeting. I will go to every city council meeting because people want to connect with the senior leader. They want to be able to share their concerns. You know, if I tell my children, if you're struggling in class, go talk to the teacher. That's the person you want to talk to get you some help. And people are hurting in our city, and they don't have anyone that's listening. So then they use their activism, and the only way they can be heard is to do sometimes the extreme. We don't have to get to that point. Imagine how many times you knock on the door. For example, I have a dislocated tailbone. I went to my doctor in April of last year, had the x-rays done. They said the tailbone was fine. So I still pushed through the pain. I play the organ, played sacred music for 20 years. When I get off the organ on Sundays, I'm in excruciating pain. But nobody knows it, so I'm still pushing through. And I had a car accident in October. Go to the chiropractor, he says your tailbone is dislocated. So we thought it was from the accident, but then we went back and got the x-rays from April and found out that that was a problem. So I just made an appointment to go see another doctor. They gave me a nurse practitioner. And I had to come back and call again and say, I don't want to see the nurse practitioner. I want to see my doctor. Imagine how frustrated I am now that I've had to live with this pain for an extended period of time. And now what they're saying I need to do in order to relieve myself, I can't do because I'm in a campaign. So I don't have the time to heal myself. You have people who are at the same place in the city who have been trying to get help, going to get help, and always getting misdiagnosed, sent somewhere else. Our city needs to be healed. And that healing comes from being able to connect with a physician that's going to assess what the problem is and come up with a diagnosis. And we don't have to keep sending folk out away with a failed diagnosis and then having them living in pain.
Yeah, you came here from Chicago. What brought you to Memphis?
I was born in Memphis, 5th generation Memphian, born in Methodist Hospital on Union, lived at 2nd and I think something like that, Wells and 7th, I think it was. And then my grandmother moved to the South Sub area off Alton and Lauderdale. I remember taking my bike up to the fire station and hosing it down with the big hose and having water everywhere and all of that good stuff. My mother moved to Chicago while I was early aged, and all of my formative years have been in Chicago. I think that living in Chicago, though, has afforded me the opportunity to see outside of Memphis and to see how other things are done and to be able to bring that back and see these are the best practices of Memphis, because Memphis is a gem. I love Memphis, and I say that like...
How did you come back?
So my wife and I had a 6-bedroom, 5-bathroom mansion in Bronzeville in Chicago, and I was converting the basement into a restaurant. And I had some restaurant equipment down here in storage, and we were on a highway coming down, and I looked at my wife and said, I don't want to go back. So we came, I saw my mother, we went back to back to Chicago, packed up, and came down in a week. And we stayed with my mother, and it was me, my wife, my 3 sons, my 2 Great Danes, and my mother in a 2-bedroom townhouse. And we grew it until we were able to do what we needed to do. And I think that Memphis is a place, that's why my campaign slogan is the gateway to new beginnings. Because for individuals who don't live in Memphis, this is the best place for you to come and start afresh. And then for people who live in Memphis, my administration is going to create this atmosphere where you can start anew. This is something different for you. So that's how I got here. I was happily at home watching Judge Mathis and the People's Court every day. Did not have to be out here running for mayor. And I just saw people who were in some situations that I thought that I would be able to kind of be able to help.